Do you want to create 3D visualizations that are triggered by your music in Ableton Live? Well, I'm going to show you how using OSC and Unreal Engine. But first I need to tell you a little bit about what this is. This is a method for being able to take MIDI data, turning that into OSC in order to communicate with Unreal Engine, and then using that data to trigger effects and events within Unreal Engine. So let's dive in and I'll show you how it works. Right, I'm here in Ableton Live, and what we're going to do is we're just going to set up a basic bit of instrument here to have something to work with. So I'm just going to go into packs and I'm just going to pull out like a clip basically. Here we go. So we've got a pretty basic thing. I'll put it onto new track and we can see this is like, it's already done. We've got some MIDI data here and there's some audio as well. I'm just using this as an example, but it could be anything, any of your own music or clips, whatever, as long as there's some MIDI data there. Right, so there's a specific module that we need inside of Max for Live. So this does require you to have Max for Live in order to do this. So I'm going to go into here. I can't remember which pack you install. I just have all of the free ones installed and it turns up here. Go into Max for Live, search OSC. And then we want OSC MIDI send. And what this is going to do is going to add a little thing here, and this is going to be sending out OSC data whenever it gets a MIDI message. So we can kind of see some stuff happen here. It's got the note number, and then it's got the velocity of each note that's being triggered. And it's triggering a lot. It's triggering every single thing in there as well, actually. So there's a lot going on there. Right, so first up, that's kind of us set up for the very beginning. I'm going to load up into Unreal Engine and get that working. Okay, I'm going to create a blank project. We don't need anything special in here. We're just going to make that now. There we go, and we are in. So the first thing we need to do is enable a couple of plugins. It's probably only one of these plugins actually, but I never know which one, so I'm just going to install both. Search OSC up here, and then we want this OSC Open Sound Protocol and OSC Remote Control Protocol. I'm pretty sure the second one of these is kind of like a built-in thing that allows you to like tie specific bits of OSC data to like events and things. It's probably like slightly easier to use, but it's not as dynamic. And in fact, I find it like really, really complex. You can't really change things out on the fly. Much prefer this method that we're going to do now. So it'll ask you to restart. Here we go. Let's get rid of that. Don't need that. Don't even need that one. We're going to make a new folder. Put OSC. And then within that folder, we're going to make another blank level. Just keep things simple. And then what we're going to do is we are going to create a new actor. I'm going to call this, just call this OSC for now. Right, got this open. We need to drag this into our world. So this is in our world now. We'll need that for later, and then we can go to our event graph. Right, if we right click here and go OSC server, we need to create an OSC server because Live is sending OSC messages, but what happens with like OSC is you need like a server to like tell things what to do. And we could set up in Live, but seeing as we're doing a lot of logic within Unreal Engine, it kind of makes sense to do it there. And in fact, I think we have to enable to be able to receive the message in the first place. So we'll create an OSC server. We'll promote this to a variable. There we go. And then we will bind event to on message received. So this will now, if we create a custom event here, every time we get a message from OSC, basically at the right server, we will get a thing. So let's just do a little print string and see what happens. So we'll put the same IP address that we've got in Unreal, in Ableton. This is set to 127.00.1, which is like a local host thing. That's fine, we can use that. If you're using different machines, which is totally possible because OSC is designed to work across network protocol, then that's where you might be using different IP addresses. And then the port, the default port is 2346, I believe. Let me just double check that. Yeah, 2346, yeah, cool. And then one last thing, we need to click on start listening, otherwise it's not going to actually do anything, and it needs to be listening out for the messages we're going to send. So we'll hit play. So the game is playing, hit play in Ableton, and then we can see we're getting messages through. We're getting like a message every time we get a thing. But that's not very useful. We need a bit more differentiation between our messages because at the moment they all just say hello. Let's just pause that. Right, so here we've got a message tab, and there's a couple of little modules or functions that we can use to get these messages in. So the first one is get OSC message address, and then we need to convert that address to a string. And then let's see what happens here when we print this. So now each of those separate messages will be getting a separate string. There we go. So we're getting a note and we're getting velocity. And the numbers there, we stop it a minute. In our thingy here, we've got note 1, note 2, note 3, note 4, velocity 3. So what's happening there is each of those numbers relates to a separate note that's being played at the same time or overlapping. And actually we're getting 2 messages both for the note and 2 messages for velocity. We're going to get a message for note on, a message for note off, and we're getting a message for velocity on and velocity off, which is actually really annoying. That's not what we want at all. So we've got a little bit of work to do inside of Ableton Live in Max to actually adjust that for our needs. So let's go over here and we're going to open up this module. Now, if you haven't used Max for live devices before, they're super useful. They can do all sorts of things, and they're all entirely editable. So there's a very good chance that maybe you've used a couple, but you've not kind of dived into the inner workings of it. So it can be a bit scary, but I'm just going to walk you through it and explain a little bit of what it's going on. You don't really need to understand it. But yeah, here it is. But it's great because we can just edit stuff, and there's a lot of like default and like Max for Live devices there that do really useful stuff that you're like, oh, I wish it did this thing. And you can just change it. Like, it's all there. It's all this like node-based workflow stuff. I remember learning this in like university, so like my memory of it is really fuzzy and I have to look things up. And what I'm going to do actually is load up one that I did earlier, because I can look at that for reference and basically just copy the stuff across, make sure it works. Right, so what's going on here? Let's zoom in a bit. Essentially what's happening is we've got, if I play this, you can see we're getting the note number and we're getting the velocity. And those are things that don't show up in the main, in our OSC message. And both of those would be useful. And it'd be much better if they're in the same message, because then we can pull data out at the same time rather than have separate messages and having to marry them up and stuff. So let's have a look. Right, this is where things are getting sent. So we're eventually going to send things there. We're joining together these various messages into one thing. We don't want to do that. So let's go over to my older version and then just copy some stuff from here. So I'm just going to copy this one across. And what you need to do is just sort of maybe pause here and copy this. Like, so what you need to do is get out an object. There'll be this object here, and then you just need to type this in kind of character for character, basically. And what that's doing is it's taking various inputs that we tell them what to be, like the pitch and the note number and the velocity, and combining that down into one message, which is essentially what we want to do at the end of the day. The other one we need is a join to, so we can just type that out. That's pretty easy. And this will just join 2 integers together. And this combiner needs to go into the join. We also need something to trigger it, which is we're just going to take from velocity, I believe. Yes, we're taking that from velocity. And then this combiner is, sorry, not the combine, the join is going to this upsend. And then all we need to do, this poly object here, it's taking MIDI in, and then this poly object just breaks that out into what the voice number is, the pitch, and the velocity. That's a module that exists within Max anyway. So we want the, let's just make this bigger so I make sure I'm doing the right thing. We want the voice number to go into number. We want the pitch to go into pitch. And we want the velocity to go into velocity. And then what was the last thing we need to do? Yeah, we need to take away a couple of these things. That we basically don't need this. And we don't need this. Oops. And I think that's done, I believe. So, well, we'll see, won't we? Let's just save this as another test version. Yeah, here we go. That's fine. So go back into here. I didn't explain this actually. I dragged this out. This is like the sort of presentation version that you see down here. You just got to click this like patching mode thing, and then it might be frozen or locked. You just need to like unfreeze it and unlock it in order to be able to like change things in here. But we're done now. Save that. And then hopefully when we play back in Unreal Engine, brilliant. All right, we're getting the data that we want. So let's just look at this data for a minute and see how different it's been before. So before we were just getting notes on, notes off. The raw is actually that data. It's an integer that you can add on to the end, but I find it easier just to have it as one formatted thing. So it's got the note 4, note 3. We actually don't need that, but it doesn't matter. That's the note number, and then that's the velocity. So you can do some interesting stuff with that. Essentially, the only one that we really want is the velocity on. So unless you're doing some complex stuff where you want something to happen when you press a note and then something to happen again when you press it off, I've never really found a use for that. Like, to be honest, the best thing I've found is just being able to have like a trigger that does a thing. And you can use the velocity to change maybe how much that happens. So let's set up a little animation and see what we can get going. Right, I'm going to, this is like a completely dark level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in, I'm going to add a sphere to this object, and we're not going to see it in the viewport because it's a completely dark level. So let's put in a directional light, which we're still not seeing anything because we're behind our thing. And let's put another one in. Hello. That's okay.
Come on then. Let's go play.
I'm working.
No, you're not working. I'm going to go play. Daddy's still finishing work. He's still doing work.
I'm working.
Sure you are.
Right, should we take our shoes off?
We've got that one. In fact, let's put in a skylight. This will kind of give us more to work with. And let's not do it as scene, let's do it as specified cube map. Just load in that, and there we go. We've got like a bit more lighting on our little sphere here. Cool. So press play, nothing happens. That's great. It's all working as it should. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this message, and we're going to pass this message through to trigger something on this sphere. So let's bring in the sphere, and we're going to make a timeline. And then in the timeline, we're going to add a track, add a float track. I'm going to put this down to like 1 second. It doesn't need to be nearly this long. And we're going to put actually no, we're going to put 3 points on this track. So this one's going to be 0, 0. This one's going to be 1, 0. And then this one is going to be 0.1. And then we're going to put a value of 1 there. So you can kind of see what's going to be happening here. It's like a ramp. We're going to ramp up really quickly and then go down. In fact, I might just bring that over here a bit. There we go. Right, so what we're going to do is we're basically going to get the beat, or whenever we get a trigger, we're going to make this kind of like bump up in size, basically. So to do that, we can go set world, let's do scale. Yeah, set world, scale 3D. And we're going to drag out from that and do a lerp. And this is going to be, we're going to go from 1 on all 3 axes. And we're going to go to 2 on all 3 axes. And then this track is going to drive that. And then we're going to hook this up, play from start, hook that up to the update, and let's just see what happens. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to play this, and I'm going to just turn the volume down so we're not listening to it the whole time. And then in here, we're going to press play, and we get this like crazy effect because every single note, all of the hi-hats, all of the kicks, all of the snares are affecting that thing, which isn't what we want. We might want to be a bit more discriminate as to about what we do. Right, so we can break this down a bit. So if we look at our messages, they basically consist of 3 numbers. And what we can do from that is we can take those three numbers and we can split it into an array. So we can go make array. No, sorry. Pass into array. And our delimiter there is going to be that. So now we have got an array on every frame or on every trigger. We can get one of those values. So 0 will be this kind of slash note under, with that, and then 1 will be the note number, and then the number 2 will be the actual velocity. So we type in 1 there, and we can go equals, oops, to integer. Let's go, yeah, string to integer. And then say we only want it to be on 36. I'm not sure what 36 is, but you can kind of do some tests and figure out like what note is doing what, and it'll be totally different depending on what instrument you set up. We can set up a branch here. We can put this into the branch, make this a bit tidier. And now let's see what's going on. I think it's like on the claps or something, I'm not entirely sure. But you can see it's doing it much less because we're only triggering it when we're getting that specific number. And what's quite nice here is that we can promote this to a variable. So note to trigger. And now what we've got is a nice little variable. Let's compile that. And so we want to change it to like 41. It's going to be on a different note, and you could combine these together as well. You could have it either or, you could do different logic depending on that, and have it triggered by different things. So you can kind of see how you can quickly build up like effects. And like this is just a simple trigger. So this trigger is coming through, it's getting triggered when you get that note, and that could trigger all kinds of like really powerful effects. You could have like particle stuff, lights, things changing over time. You can get these like really, really cool effects that can be like super dynamic, especially when you stack them up over like various instruments and things. And what's quite cool as well is we can just go in to Ableton and we can use this same module on any channel, on any instrument, whatever it may be. Like it will always have these same note values, so you kind of need to be able to delineate and like choose where you have a note. But one way I like to get around that is to basically send to different channels. So oops, if I make a new MIDI track, I can like in from one of these channels. So if I take in from, oh, here we go. So yeah, MIDI from electrified kit, and then you just got to enable the arm, and then you'll start getting MIDI data through on that clip. So you could send multiple things to multiple places with that, or you could even have like sort of ghost notes that aren't playing anything, but they trigger like at the same time as an actual note, and then that way you, from your composition, you can almost have this like animation track where it's like triggering things at the right time to do certain things. And the triggers don't have to be like a trigger. They could be an on or an off, or they could be creating some kind of other logic or creating a sequence worth of stuff. There's a module in here. Let's see if we can find it quickly. Just pause that. OSC. I think it's just this one, OSC send. So it's not OSC MIDI send, it's OSC send. And this is kind of interesting because this will basically take a parameter. So let's take, what's it called? The envelope follower. Yeah, which is actually another Max for Live effect. But let's put that here. This is like an envelope follower basically. And so what this is doing is you can use it on any track or anything. It's really useful actually for like being able to control like other effects. And what this does is just listening out, a bit like a compressor would for like the peaks and troughs. And if we put a instrument rack, or I think it's an effects rack actually we would need. Yeah, here we go. And then just get our macros out. You can do this like clever thing basically where you like map that to that, and you also map that to that. And then essentially what we're doing is we're reading from here, reading the volume data, and it could be any data, it doesn't have to be volume. And we're sending that out to this OSC address. So envelope 1. So let's see what happens now. Oops. If we go into here. Yeah, here we go. So we've got like some envelope data there as well. Now this is different. These aren't like individual triggers. This is like lots and lots of messages like overlapping each other. So this envelope 1 here that you can see down here, we need like a float value on the end of that. So we can do that pretty simply. We can go get floats. It'll be the first one. Yeah, so we just want to get the first one, and then what we can do is we can append that. Let's put a little slash there. And then let's print from that and see what we get. Why is that not working? Oh, because we're not actually like linked to it. There we go. So yeah, sorry, we're getting a bit messy here, but there we go. I'll kind of zoom in on this page just to so you might just want to copy what I've got here just to like see what's going on. So let's hit play. Here we go. Right, so we're getting a very, very precise OSC envelope bit of data there. And this is why we're using OSC and not getting a lot of errors here, but it doesn't really matter. We're going to get the same thing. Envelope 1 / 0.509799. If you're using MIDI, you only get 127 values. Like that's kind of built in. It's a very old system. OSC is much more kind of forward facing. It's like a 8-bit or 7-bit, I'm not sure, but you're getting like tens of thousands of values to use, so you can get much, much smoother animations and much, much smoother data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to like quickly feed this in to our scale here and see what happens. So I'll pull this out. So instead of doing it with the timeline, I'm going to disconnect the timeline. I'm also going to leave the branch, and I'm just going to send, like, all I'm literally sending here, I'm not sending any of the triggers. I'm just sending the float data when it gets it. So let's see what happens now. Yeah, well, actually, it kind of is getting the triggers as well, so it's going to do some random shit. But basically, all I'm doing now is sending that envelope data to like give it the thing. So actually, what we could do is filter it. If we went by here, contains envelope. And then we go branch. Now this will filter out all of those triggers, so it'll only get the envelope data. Yeah, there we go. And then if I like make some changes here, actually, I'll sort of move this over so you can see what I'm doing. If I change some stuff in here, like the fall thing, this is going to affect the animation of here, because I'm literally taking the data one from the other. If I up the gain, like it's going to do that. So you can like dial in the animation from that point. And this is really cool for like synthy sounds, basses, things like that. It works very well for drums, actually. It's kind of a good way of changing it. But obviously this is reading like the pure audio. So I'm not being able to, I can't filter out like the different triggers. So it's kind of up to you how you want to use triggers or whether you use envelopes and things, but I'll probably leave it there for now. Like that's a basic animation, but you can imagine like you've got the realm of Unreal Engine at your fingertips. You can do a lot of crazy stuff. Anything you can really think of, and that's the basis for the project I've been working on called Synchromotion, which is a kind of suite of tools that I've been custom building for myself, but hopefully I'll be able to share some of that at some point in order to create like music videos that we can play live. So we're playing them in virtual production, triggering graphics, like real instruments are able to trigger that stuff as well. I'm really kind of exploring what the limit of this stuff is. So hopefully by sharing this, I get to see some other stuff that people have been working on and putting forward this thing, because I think it's a really exciting blend of like live visuals with music, like live music and things like that. So hope that was helpful. Let me know if you've got any questions, thoughts, queries, qualms, ideas. I'm all ears. So please let me know, and I'll see you on the next one.